My first season as a professional in Holland, we had a disastrous season. And I always think back to this when I'm working with clients who are having a tough season.
At the end of the day, the biggest problem remains when the outer critic starts informing the inner critic, and the inner critic starts repeating those stories.
When we watch soccer, something happens that has nothing to do with soccer and everything to do with it. Welcome to the Golden Ball, where depth psychology and the beautiful game help us play life better. My name is John O'Brien, former World Cup soccer player and sports psychologist.
My name is Machiel Klerk. I'm a psychotherapist, founder of Jung Platform, and lover of the game of soccer.
Hello, my name is Akke-Jeanne Klerk. I'm a personal development coach and a depth psychology teacher. Yeah, so today the topic is criticism.
Great, yeah. And in thinking about this, there's a story I'd love to share to kind of kick us off. My first season as a professional in Holland, we had a disastrous season. And I always think back to this when I'm working with clients who are having a tough season within their club, and it's really a resource for me. The team, all kinds of stuff, criticism, coach got fired, power vacuum, like all the bad things happened. So in thinking about this topic, that really came up to me. And then one specific experience related to that, a little story I want to tell. So Ajax had been around 100 years. This is year 2000. So they were doing, it was going to be a special year. They decided to do a documentary, like all access documentary to that season. Season, like I said, ended up being a horrible season. We finished fifth, which is like unheard of for Ajax at that time. After editing was complete, season's over, a few months later, we get invited to this beautiful opening of the documentary to Shinsky Theater in Amsterdam. This beautiful Art Deco like theater downtown. We get all dressed up. I remember putting on my suit, feeling like, oh, this is cool. I feel important, going downtown. And everyone from our team is there, the coaches, people who are part of the staff, like VIPs, invitees, media. Like it was a special event. And sitting there in the theater, right, a huge movie screen, and we're watching this documentary of our year that didn't go well. So like just rife with a lot of evaluation. And then one moment, there's the board are sitting around discussing player contracts. And I hear one of the members say, and John O'Brien, what do you think of him? And they passed over to Danny Blind, club legend. He was technical director then. This was, a player who'd won the Champions League in 1995 with them. They pass over to Danny Blind, so you got his head on the screen, like 10 feet by 10 feet. And he goes, ik zie het niet. I don't really see it, I don't really see it. Basically saying like, I don't think we should give him a contract extension. I just remember feeling like, oh my God, like it was a cartoon. Like I felt so small. I just wanted to disappear. Everyone else got big. I felt like they were looking at me. So that was kind of just one poignant moment I remember. And there was ways I dealt with it that were, best I could at the time. And I think we'll get into that, different responses to dealing with being evaluated. But there's also like a human component to it too, right? Like we all get criticized in different ways or evaluated. And we all have different relationships with authority that come up. So I thought that season and that moment might be a good place to start for our conversation today.
Yeah, I have to smile about it, but it's a terrible moment as a young man sitting in that beautiful theater and hearing this. And I think you already point out that criticism has the quality of evaluating. So criticism in itself is somewhat a neutral phenomenon, but we all feel more it is a negative word. We have positive criticism, negative criticism. It is this evaluation. And I think in your case, what made it even more difficult is it was not the criticism of the neighbor. It was criticism of Danny Blind, club legend, who decides over your contract. So it makes it significantly more complex than some newspaper writing on Monday a bad article.
Talking about complexity, it also happens in a theater. Everyone is watching. So I think we all have had our moments in our work life with a boss receiving criticism, but then it happens just between you and the other. And here it's out there. And so with everyone is looking, how are you dealing with it? Yeah, so how did you deal with it, John?
Yeah, the best I knew how, which, I think wasn't perfect. But afterwards, there was the media was right outside just jumping on anyone who could have some controversial topic. And I think I probably said something like, he's entitled to his opinion, but, I'm going to keep working and blah, 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 blah. It kind of went on from there. I think internally for me, there was a way that I really kind of disengaged from Danny Blinn after that. Emotionally, it was just okay, kind of forget him. And he wasn't my direct coach. So in the work environment, it wasn't, as hard as a direct coach in some ways. But yeah, that was my way of dealing with it, kind of separating myself from him, just being whatever, and then going out. So I was able to block it out to some extent, but also I disengaged. And there was actually one other moment that is also really memorable. And it's memorable that I remember this after so much time, but a few days later in the locker room, another player brought it up. And he's like, hey, how about John how about Danny Blinn kind of not liking you, John? How about that? And it was really nice. It was kind of a nice moment where it was some witnessing of what happened, some acknowledgement, right? I was just trying to block it all out, whatever, just keep playing, do my thing. But it felt like it humanized the situation in a way.
Yeah, brought a little bit of air to the situation that otherwise could isolate you.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. It did feel kind of lonely. I felt lonely, this happened to me, and I was alone in it. And somehow he acknowledged it, and maybe even acknowledging it kind of brought me back into the team, right? Because it was a social criticism. It was a criticism among peers. Peers were there to watch, and so it brought me back in some belonging of hey, you're one of us still. That happens. You're one of us, which felt really nice.
Yeah. And what I think is so interesting about soccer is dealing with criticism. It's really everywhere. It's within the club. It's with your peers. It's from the trainer coach. It's from the public. It's from football analysts. It's the audience in the stadium. There's feedback coming your way, and there's criticism coming your way. So it's not so much how can I avoid it, but really how do I deal with it as a soccer player? And I think as people generally, we really have to relate somehow. There's no avoiding possible.
Well, that is very true, and I think that brings it back to we all experience criticism a lot. And in the soccer world, you can avoid it to a certain extent. Don't open certain newspapers, really know who says what. Unfortunately, with social media, your friends will forward you the meme where they criticize you. But yeah, it probably comes down to in our own lives also who says it and what value do I place on that criticism. And criticism by nature stinks, so we have to be very careful with the stinging nature of criticism.
Yeah, so there's something in the way that you receive criticism. It asks something because it will come your way, and how to deal with that sting, as you're saying, Machiel. And I hear in what you're saying also the first who is doing it, or who is saying this? Is this person informed? I know that one of the Dutch players said the other day, people don't understand football, so why to take criticism from people that don't really understand the game? Like, is this person informed is a really good first setting boundary who you accept criticism from and who not to accept it from, or it might be helpful.
Yeah. And so with John's example, the problem there was that it is someone who decides over your contract. It's not someone in behind the TV in some remote place.
Personally, it was someone I respected, right? He played at the highest level. He played a similar position to me. So there was some, you know, like a wish for me to like, for him to like have my back. Like that would have felt really good, right? And instead it was the total opposite. Yeah.
How did you, what were some mechanisms that made you continue to play well? What did you tell yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I think, right, sometimes in these situations there can be like that, I'm going to prove him wrong, you know, and I had that at different points in my career, but that was more related to maybe sitting on the bench or something like that, where it's like, no, I want to prove the coach wrong. In this moment, it wasn't that. But I think for me, it was just like blocking it out, like whatever, let it go. If it came up in my memory, I'll let it go, you know. But I think as a 20, I think I was 21-year-old, right, a little more processing. What I'd wish for myself, and when I work with athletes in a similar situation, is just kind of opening it up a little more, letting the feelings be there. And then maybe shifting a little bit towards like, you know, what do you care about? Again, this kind of inner decider or inner authority. You know, what really matters to you? You know, he doesn't like you. It wasn't really, he didn't say he like certain critiques of me, nothing I could take in and find useful. It was just kind of an opinion in a way. So it's like, okay, well, what are you good at? You know, what do you care about? What are you good at? And kind of like having some self-definition. Yeah. And more self-belief, like, hey, he might not think that, but I know I put in the work. I know I could play at this level. That's okay. He can have his opinion.
Yeah. So what I hear you do is you have an inner critic that could repeat the same thing. You're not good enough. And whatever it then starts saying, criticize him. You're not good at this particular defensive task. You're not good at this. Or you shift to the inner authority that comes from a different position, and that you can focus on. I play the game because I really enjoy playing soccer, and I do my best playing soccer, and I will see where we end. Then that you move yourself out of the inner critic, because at the end of the day, the biggest problem remains when the outer critic starts informing the inner critic, and the inner critic starts repeating those stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And I think one element I'd add to that, like that, is space, right? Like how much space does the inner critic, or that image of Danny Blind is 10 foot by 10 foot head, like how much does it kind of take up in my psyche? You know, is it something that's like present there all the time, or is it something that comes, oh, there it is again, and it goes, and there's space for other parts of myself?
Yeah.
So I think when people talk about authority, right, it can sometimes dominate your whole psyche, and really learning to live with it and relate to it and kind of get it in its right place seems important.
Yeah, that probably also relates to what Jung calls the complexes, you know, where the psychological history plays up. Like in this moment, there might be experiences earlier in childhood where the authority, someone in an authority figure or in authority position has criticized you. And if that has a life of its own, an emotional charge that gets triggered the moment that it gets repeated later on in life. And so there's an entire history suddenly in the present coming up emotionally as well to deal with. So then it's not just Danny Blind, it might be that there's way more. That's also why certain people might be more getting off balance when they receive criticism than others, depending on their history.
and the history has densified into an inner critic. And so for a big part, it comes down to how do we deal with this inner critic, and there are all kinds of steps to do that. But it's very important just to know for people that they're not one person, like that in the Jungian psychology, we're a boarding house of figures. We have the I, and then there is one figure that walks around and criticizes everything, and usually has a particular style and particular points and particular rhythm of speaking, and in some people is more dominant than others. We all have it, but we need to learn. We need to learn about this figure so that that we don't identify with it, that we start believing it. Because the critic is not the best coach, that's for sure.
Yeah, so how would you work with an inner critic, Machiel?
I think that one fun, interesting way is close your eyes and allow the critical voice to be present, hear what it says, and then imagine what kind see what kind of image comes up, and then what kind of figure. If this was, if you had to draw it, what would it look like? It could be a kind of a skinny figure, or a dark cloud, or anything can come up, and then you can what you do there is you get it out of yourself. Because in the initial phase, it's very often we're identified with it, so we need to get it. We can relate to it, and then step 2 is write down the things it says, and usually it falls back in certain behavioral of repetitive patterns. You're not good at this, or you don't speak up, or you have weird ears, or you cannot relate to people, or whatever it hammers down. And it hammers down usually a small subset of things. And then at least we know, there you are, a skinny stick figure saying, you're not good enough. Okay. Then that is then you can have it there. And then you can learn how to be with it, because usually it doesn't go away. And in step 3, you can just learn not to engage with it, because very often in the initial phase we argue with it. No, I am good enough. I did it this year and here, and then it always comes back with, yeah, but this time, or that was luck, and then it talks into some anxiety. We get anxious. It finds a way back in, and the critical voice has dominated again. So those are some imaginal steps that are deep work that take time. But this figure also took time to develop. It takes time, but it really helps to differentiate and get a better relationship to the critic. There are, of course, some easier initial steps as a growth mindset, etc., but they don't do the more deep fundamental operation on the inner critic.
Yeah, thanks for outlining that. Yeah, I'm really hearing you say the word relating to and relationship, thinking of something being the right size and having some power in relation to it, right? Like power of decision with it, that are all part of it. I want to shift a little bit and think about, right, because there's a part of evaluation, people giving evaluation, that is like a gift. Someone saying, especially if we can separate, the information from you as a person, maybe, right? Like on a soccer field, like, not you're lazy, but like, hey, you didn't run hard enough in this moment, right? Like, but like sometimes that evaluation, it can be great. It can help you improve. Someone's spending time thinking about you, kind of invested in your getting better. Yeah. So, I mean, I've had times where evaluation if I'm not guarded, has been just enormously fun and useful. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And the origin of the word criticism is to discern, from the Greek word to discern. So having the ability to discern. And I think that's really interesting that someone, when they have some feedback for you, that it asks you to really to discern what about this rings true for me, or how does it resonate? So someone can tell me something, and it's really up to me to make sense of it, to feel it, but also to think and analyze, like what can I learn from it? Because then it can become a critical moment in my development. But whether I take their story or my story becomes, of course, problematic when their story about who I am becomes more heavy or override my personal story about what happened. But I think criticism is really important for growth.
Yeah, it can foster the growth mindset, and if it's delivered in a great way, it's helpful. We can learn to deliver criticism. The Dutch are a critical country, and borders more on the negative criticism, and that is where the growth mindset comes in, and that is especially in sport, but in life, tremendously helpful. Didn't go well, what did I learn? How can I be better? Go on. But that also takes in a bit of the inner figure that says, yeah, this is a good point. Yes. I agree with this, and I can do this better.
Yeah, in that respect, I'm thinking of a situation that I saw on television in which the Dutch coach Koeman said, I'm not going to read anymore what the press writes. And he said it's affecting me, and it doesn't help me. And then, of course, the Dutch press reacted to that, like they had all these judgments that was that. So in a way, they became quite defensive in that criticism that Koeman just said. I'm not going to take in those stories from the press anymore. But if you reflect on that and discern what is being said, Koeman says, it's not helping me in any way to perform better if I take in the messages of the media that are quite critical. And if you really take that in and see if that resonates, it could also be a moment for the press to write different kinds of stories. If you want your country to perform, if you want your team to perform, you can do something to help that. But to criticize in the way that it's done is not helpful. I thought that's also criticism, but then in an unexpected way.
Yeah, I'm hearing in that, like he set a boundary, right? Like, and it sounds like it was one of wisdom and self-care. Like, he probably wants to perform his job well. Hey, this is what's going to work better for me if I kind of stop reading this stuff. And sometimes when you set boundaries, right, people have fits. We know this from couples therapy or with kids. No more TV. What? No more TV. I'm going to throw my grapes on the floor and smash them. So yeah, that's what that brings up for me. And I'd love to talk more about boundaries, because I think, right, we're talking about filtering in information, what you keep out, what you let in. And I really enjoy this sand play stuff where I can make figures kind of illustrate it. And I have some examples of that, but that I'm happy to talk about as we get further down the road.
Yeah, I think all those techniques that help to externalize these inner figures, these inner characters, and how we can relate to them can be tremendously helpful. Sand play, drawing, making some clay figure. It helps to what Jung would call Auseinandersetzung, what the aim was of therapy, to pull out of each other. Otherwise, it's all one big mess, and that you have multiple little messes. And then you can relate better.
So with one client I was working with who had a new coach come in. And so we talked about her kind of reactions to this new coach. And we put up a wall, and she picked a figure that could represent herself on one side. And then there was also a bridge. And then picked a figure to represent the coach on the other side. First thing she did was readjust. No more bridge. There's an opening, but no bridge. I don't want that kind of access, right? That was a clear boundary they decided for themselves. And then we started putting kind of, what do you need on this side to support you? What do you want to let through and what not? And a lot came from, I want information about the sport, but my coach was really emoted a lot of expression of frustration or excitement, just a lot of emotion that wasn't helping the athlete. And they said they wanted all that to stay on their side. And so I think for this client, it was really helpful in just discerning, again, what they wanted to let through, feeling that they could kind of decide that themselves, like, here's my wall, here's what it makes me feel safe, and then kind of continue in the sport environment in that way.
Beautiful, yes.
Yeah, I like that example because it's really that discernment between what is really mine and what belongs to the other. And if it comes with, I don't know, with intensity and aggression, like you were saying, like, is that really about me and my performance, or is that somehow related to who you are? Like, and being able to make that distinction is quite important in the process, because otherwise, someone is super intense, you take it all about you. You're doing way too much inner work for the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of this is developmental, right? Some people are going to be better at it, but like there's an aspect as our mind and our brains grow, again, being able to differentiate ourselves from other people, what's personal versus what's more about me doing. So when I work with a lot of teenagers, I could see this in people in different kind of places along, kind of pulling these parts apart and getting to know them better.
Yeah, and I think it also relates to self-belief. You know, in a previous episode, we talked about self-belief, and if you have self-belief, you give yourself permission to try things. Then, when someone has criticism or tells you what you can do differently, you can really see it as their story. You give yourself permission, and you take the learnings from it. But without that self-belief, it becomes quite difficult. It's almost like there's no center to fall back on, or I think you said that, John, that there needs to be a weight inside of you, or there needs to be a power inside of you that can encounter the power of the inner figure or the outer figure, or even worse, when they're falling together, then you need to separate what's really my inner critic and what's the outer critic, and are they saying exactly the same? And most likely they are not. Right? That is the experience.
In what way are they not saying the same?
Well, in the example of a football player, like you are going too slow, or you don't notice your teammates. Someone might blame themselves as if I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, or I'm not welcome. Like a message or conclusion gets drawn, a really big one, which is really related to history and the child's perspective, and nothing what the actual coach said.
Yeah,
Like
get it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, if we continue with this figure metaphor, it has also to do with building up a stronger foundation. Gratitude practices are notoriously helpful for that. And then you are in a better place to discern what to take in and what not to take in, and where your authority is.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that. I'd love to kind of zoom in on this a little bit, because I'm not perfect dealing with authority, still a work in progress. And I think there's some things that I've noticed, like, I guess just noticing myself sometimes when I might like cower or pull back, and I'll be able to kind of notice it and just still be in relationship with myself and relationship with the other person, and maybe seeing what perspective or what part of me is coming up with some ideas. So there's kind of like a noticing of reaction in relation to authority that I feel like I've gotten better at dealing with. Yeah, does that ring true for you in terms of how do people notice development in this area of like hearing feedback and working through it in better ways?
Yeah, well, luckily you learn to deal better with it. You see also so many different forms of feedback. I know that early on when I did some public talks, I was much more triggered by people leaving, and now I just know, oh, there's always someone that leaves for some reason. But in the beginning, I would think, oh my gosh, I don't deliver a good enough talk, or people respond to elements in the talk that I didn't say. I've seen that also enough, so they have a whole response that has nothing to do with the talk. In the beginning, I found that frustrating, and now I just know that happens, and how that, especially if it doesn't touch something internally, it's just it's part of the game. And that, I think, just to learn that inner critic better, everything that comes close to the inner critic will be amplified.
Yeah, probably also the time it takes to recover from the feedback is an indication whether you're able to handle with it better. When I was young in my career and I got feedback on reports I had to write, it was ego crushing. Really, I felt like it was such an attack on who I was, but I could also see that my writing skills at the time weren't great. So I was really in the learning process. And these days, I think generally I'm a little bit better in dealing with criticism. I've got the capacity to discern a little bit more, or if it stings, I sit with it and I look at it. What is it? Whereas a young person, I was more moving away from it or very defensive. And I think you can sometimes see this in soccer players as well at the World Cup. Like Ronaldo gets a lot of criticism, doesn't he? Like you need to be able to, or he needs to be able to deal with that because there's a lot coming his way. And he now is older, but I don't know. I've not tracked him good enough over the years. If over the years he has the capacity to deal with it better than before.
Well, the problem that he has, for example, is that currently people say he's too old. And is that true or not? He thinks it's not, but it's me sitting here, I don't know. I don't see him from close enough, but I wonder if he's too old. And it can do his defensive tasks and be part of the team. So he has a difficult one there.
Yeah. Well, that example of that criticism, right? You're too old. That's not a workable criticism. Like you can't do anything about it. And it's personal about his age, right? Like, hey, he's not able to run, or he doesn't run enough. That would be kind of objective. Or he doesn't defend, or he's not quick enough. Like those would be things that you could kind of debate a little bit more and are more workable in some way for the athlete.
Yeah. So it's what could in that is also, it's not only how do we deal with criticism, what kind of self-talk do we have? You can work on that, and especially through gratitude, but also how do you work with others? And how do you deliver criticism? And also, what is your culture? The Dutch culture is, as you know, Akke-Jeanne and John, it's super direct. And a lot of other cultures are horrified by, by that kind of directness.
Yeah. Here in America, I learned something when I came back after being in Holland, something called the compliment sandwich, which I don't think the Dutch knew about, but hey, you really tracked back well. Next time try to also get on the left side of your defender, and you also finish the game strong, right? Or it's two compliments, and in the middle is a little bit of the feedback. But in Holland, it was very direct. Do this, don't do that.
Straight to the middle.
Straight to it, yeah. And there's some pride in that, I believe, kind of in your culture, right? Of like people doing that, like no nonsense kind of attitude.
Yeah, and I think it hurts even more when approval somehow is really important to you. If being liked or being seen or approved by others, and then you get criticism, it really feels like an attack. But if approval is less, or you're depending less on approval, but really doing what you approve of, so having that inner authority, that builds a little bit of muscle. So when someone comes quite directly and you have that muscle, yeah, I'm doing it because I like it. For ideally for Ronaldo, it's, hey, I'm here because I like it. And whether you think I'm too old, that's up to you. But as long as the coach says that I'm welcome and I get to play, that's what counts.
Yeah, and that is true, and it doesn't count for Ronaldo. Ronaldo wants to be the best. So Ronaldo has a complex inner critic that you can see that brought him very far, but that also makes him accessible, open to external criticism, because he lives somewhat from the external validation. And I do think that the other point you made is don't argue with that inner critic. You moved in that way of talking to the critic away from proving that the inner critic is wrong to shifting, I do this because I enjoy it. I want to be the best me. The inner critic has less ability to attack that. It can attack you're too old or you have a weird nose or whatever, but it cannot attack things that you do because you enjoy doing them. So the big danger is arguing with the inner critic. So when you catch yourself arguing with the inner critic, shift the conversation out of that playing field.
Nice. Yeah, and adding to that around like soccer culture, right? There's this kind of idea of being invulnerable. Like I can't show any weakness. I don't have any weakness, right? And I think we're all talking about, no, like we're all going to have inner critics. Like, and we're going to be good at some things and not good at others. Like that's a truer version of reality, right? And maybe in talking about Ronaldo, you're talking about a defensive structure that doesn't really allow for some of that kind of vulnerability to be present.
And Ronaldo had the disadvantage that he was so good, so the the structure never got torn down. Maybe even his internal structure allowed him to become among the world's best players.
Mm-hmm.
Next to inherent talent, but
yeah,
his drive is partly infused by an inner critic.
Yeah. I remember being young and imagining Michael Jordan. He was like the sports hero, but I didn't imagine him just as like an amazing athlete. He was like, he could do everything. That was kind of like a younger brain kind of puts it all together. We're talking about sifting things out. And that was something I learned, like being in a locker room with a bunch of professional athletes. It's like, sometimes from the outside, there's this image of like, wow, they're amazing. And you just think they're this like great person who's got it together. And you're in the locker room, you're like, oh, these guys are phenomenal at doing their thing. But there's a lot of like other issues happening. in different ways, and they're struggling just like kind of all of us people. So that felt like an important kind of reality's medicinal kind of check for me. And
yeah, the human qualities out of those mythological figures, or almost like the gods in the locker room. Like, oh, there's the humans in the locker room, and then I can belong to that human family. Like that feels better.
Yeah, there's a halo effect to our heroes or people that have a talent. The quality is being extrapolated horizontal, where the quality is just vertical.
No, that's a good idea. Yeah, there's quality in one direction, but it doesn't mean it goes across different domains in ways.
So when someone is listening to this, thinking, yeah, well, now that we're talking about it, I am dealing with this piece of criticism I got. What kind of advice would you give?
Well, I think we have to summarize. We got two things. One is the have a learning mindset versus a fixed mindset. What can I learn from this? Is there some truth to it? Can I learn from it? And you can improve. And the other is the more imaginal, the depth perspective, by which we create an external situation, whether it's a sandplay character or an imaginal character, and we learn about the internal critic because we over-identify with it, and then we just know there's some figure walking around in us that says, you're just rambling along, you're not making sense, whatever it says. And then you can just find ways over time not to believe it. It's initially it's like, oh, there you are again. There you are again.
Mm-hmm.
Don't engage on the content level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that inner critic works great. In sport, you hear like thick skin, or they got under your skin. And if you think about skin, right, it doesn't, like it's a boundary that's permeable, right? We let things in, we expel things out. And so I think of this the same way in some ways, and I like to think of a mountain. It might be a different image for you, but like stability, kind of an inner stability that is comfortable, like, oh, great, I get feedback. Let's see what this is. I can sift through it. I can let things go and still kind of be stable and, decide my way forward. So those are kind of what I think about when I think about how to conceptualize and help people, deal with criticism.
All right, excellent. I think that's a wrap for today.
Thank you all.